Welcome, baby. The NPC presents Smooth Finish with our hosts Rob Romano, Chris Marcano, and Brent Lane. These guys have more chemistry than your entire test kit. Ever enlightening and striving to be entertaining. So let's dive into their latest episode of the NPC's Smooth Finish.
That's a pretty cool little new intro. Something new for the group out there, right? That sounded pretty slick.
I like it.
I hope they like it. I mean, and how fitting to what we're going to be talking about today. one of the hits in there. Yeah.
It's almost like we planned it. So speaking of slick, we are joined with essentially some educational industry royalty. We are joined by the man, the music, the myth, Wayne Ivusich, the man, formerly, happily, I hope, retired recently from Tailored Technologies.
Right.
Wayne was a 31-year industry veteran, right? And I think if you've been in this business for more than 6 months in any click, you are probably recognized the name, I would hope.
Your lifer.
Yep. Wayne, I will say this. I met Wayne when I first got involved into this industry 20 years ago. And
I had hair. Hair then. Yeah.
You did. My beard was not this color. It wasn't flesh colored back then. But in that time, I personally have seen dozens of classes and seminars that were conducted by Wayne. I've always been a big fan. I've always appreciated what he brings to the industry. But your intro says so right here, but I have to actually validate this. You have given thousands, not 1,001, but thousands over this 31-year stretch, seminars, classes, and education things.
Yeah.
Obviously, it's passion for you, right?
Yeah, it is. And it's funny, when I was attending college back in the black and white days, the disco era, one of the things I wanted to be was a teacher. But, you know, as things happen in life, I took a different route and never really followed up on it or did anything with it until I got the opportunity to do that with Taylor. And it was like, okay, I'm diving into the pool I want to dive into. And it just started and took off from that point. So yeah, the number that I kind of tell people, the thousands, is probably really accurate, because I remember sitting down with a colleague of mine trying to figure out exactly how many people I've taught a class to, you know, at trade shows, at health departments, all the CPO stuff that I'm involved with. And it got to be, a little over, we figured out it was just shy of 10,000 people and a little over 1,100 classes, if you want to call it anything else. But yeah.
Wow.
Busy bee.
That's amazing.
That
touched a lot of lives.
That's a big reach. I mean, let's be honest. Our industry is not the automotive industry. You know, it is a specialty, small, very, very centric, narrow lane in the big picture of things. So
right.
Being in front of and impacting 10,000 people is pretty damn impressive. So,
well, the funniest thing is I think I've been teaching the longest at the Atlantic City show. I started teaching a class there in '92 and taught the basic chemistry and testing class there from '92 to 2023. And it got to the point where people were saying, "Oh, my dad took your course back in the late '90s." And then I actually did have one guy tell me, "Yeah, my grandfather took your course." It's like, oh God, now I'm really old. Now it's time to retire.
You might see me shaking my head here, because I think I took that course. I was 21 years old back in '92. And my dad said, "You're taking all of these courses, listening to Wayne, what have you, So, yeah.
Yeah, I remember your dad. Yeah, very well. Yeah. Wow.
So that's a whole other that's a whole other episode there.
and what the most amazing thing is that I'm only 30. So how this happened?
Exactly.
Right. Yeah.
I was just about to make the comment, 92, if Rob was attending that class, which I assumed he was, he probably was still using the Just for Men back then. It was just in a different.
Oh, no, I was totally baby faced back then, a lot, and probably about 30 pounds lighter, too.
It happens to the best of us. So I would be remiss, too, before we get into the meat of this. And today we're going to have a really just a deep dive into testing best practices, why we do it. And you know, it's one of those techniques that really is overlooked, and we kind of throw it out there like, oh, test for this, test for that. But I want to really get into your head, Wayne, and understand and share with our audience of how to test and more of the philosophy behind it and what you know is the purpose behind it, purposeful testing. But I also want to show another shout out. So you had your career with Taylor, long and illustrious, and now you've jumped into some other endeavors, and I do our friends over at the I guess it's almost a cartel, the syndicate over there of the Talking Pools podcast family. But Wayne is also currently the host of Testing Thursdays with Wayne, which is now is that every Wednesday?
My day is Thursday. It feels like it's every day sometimes, but
title says Testing Thursdays with Wayne. So
we've been the wheel.
So tell us a little bit about your podcast too before we get into our conversation.
Sure. Actually, it was funny. Almost the day after I retired, Rudy Stankiewicz, who we were just talking about before the broadcast, had approached me and said, "Look, we've held one day for you. Are you interested?" And of course, I said no. I jumped at the opportunity because technology is great when it works, and podcasts seem to be the thing of late. So I said, absolutely. So with the group that we each have our own separate day, Monday through Friday. The neat thing is that it's not just U.S. focused, and it's not just guys. We have two terrific young ladies that work with Rudy, and one lady out in California, Kelly Clancy, works with Dan Lenz. Heather Linton, who's now in Florida, works with Rudy. I'm on my own as a solo. But the neat thing is that we have two guys, one guy in Australia and one guy in New Zealand, who do Mondays Down Under, it's called. And so they give a literally completely opposite perspective, because it's starting winter there now today instead of summer, on what it's like in the pool industry down there. And it's really, really fascinating. And we've gotten a lot of great response. We got a good following for each of us. And, it's like podcasts are, you don't take a whole lot of time out of your day. It's 20 minutes, a half an hour, boom, boom, boom. You can stop it, replay it later when convening, that kind of thing. So this kind of venue to do this kind of thing like we're talking about is perfect. Absolutely perfect. Yeah.
No, that's
I agree,
awesome.
Wayne. And we brought you on for validation, right?
Right.
and
to prove that people I'm alive.
Yeah. Thanks for validating us today, and also to validate the NPC, because as Chris had mentioned before, we are always saying test your water, test your fill water, test, for your startup, all these things. So that's really why we wanted to have you. I mean, there's some things that correlate obviously with us, but we want to get your take on these things. And
sure.
So we're going to give you the floor, and
okay.
You can
let me just throw this out there, Wayne, just to kind of get us started. Like this we threw together some talking points, but if you were just talking to a nebulous group of folks, right, and we'll just say somebody that are getting started in the industry, what would you say the golden rule is when it comes to testing water?
The golden rule, actually, the golden rule kind of ties in with something you mentioned, Chris, earlier, is why do we test? Mm-hmm. We say, we tell people, yes, you must test the water or should test the water like that. But the better question, the one that I always try to emphasize when I teach, is why? You're telling somebody to do something, but you're not telling them the why. And sometimes if you don't have that connect, it's a disconnect, but you don't have that connection, forget it. So there's two, God, I got big fingers. There's two reasons why we test water. And this is for any facet of our industry, is that you want to make sure that the water is safe for people to get in. Okay. So it needs to be properly sanitized. You got to get rid of all the nastiness that might be in the water that could cause people to get sick. Okay, that's number two. Number one. Number two is something that we're all involved in. We want to make sure that the equipment is functioning properly. And that involves not only pumps and filters and hydraulics and electricity, but it involves what you guys are focused on. You got to make sure that if it's a new build, you got to make sure the plaster's cured right. You got to make sure that the people are following the instructions right, and if something happens, this is what you'll be able to identify it via testing, and this is the steps you can take to correct the problem. So the golden rule is you're testing because of safety and equipment maintenance. I think those are the two big things as far as I'm concerned.
And I agree 100%. I mean, those are the two, to me, the main philosophies behind getting an accurate snapshot of the status at that moment of the water. But to that point, I want to stress accuracy, and this is something that I've taken away from having had conversations and being involved with as an attendee of classes from Wayne, and also doing some joint stuff together. But it's accuracy is key, and again, it's know your tools. I think that's valuable. Right. And Wayne, I mean, please talk to us about when it comes to the Taylor. Obviously you were with them for a long time. It's one of, if not the most, it's kind of the benchmark for accuracy when used properly as far as testing tools and products out there and brands. But kind of talk to us about that. What makes the Taylor so predictably good? Without
turning this into an infomercial, because I am not being paid by Taylor now.
That's right.
I think one of the reasons Taylor's been around for a long time, and before I even say that, there are some other really good test manufacturers out there, and I'm not belittling them at all. I know a lot of those people. I've grown up in the industry with them, so they're out there. But I think the thing that made Taylor unique was, one, we've been around. Correct your tense. They've been around since 1930. Okay, and that's all they do is manufacture test kits. They don't make rubber duckies. They don't make pool noodles. They don't do pumps, filter. They just do testing. Number one. So their concentration it's focus. It's got blinders on. Number two is that we just don't come out with testing procedures for the hell of it. We do a lot of research involved with it, and some of it's proprietary with Taylor. Some of it's common knowledge. There's a book, a tome, actually. I don't know if you guys have ever seen it or heard of it, called Standard Methods. It's kind of like the Bible for everybody that's involved in testing in the industry, chemistry-wise. And so it details, this is the steps you do to do a chlorine DPD test, a pH test, iron test, and it details it out. So Taylor has been using that since the get-go, and it's evolved over the years. When I first started with Taylor, for example, not many people use drop tests, titrations. They'd rather do the color matching test. And the problem was a lot of people can't color match. Well,
I've always struggled with that. I either want to count out something that's very granular, right. Or I want a computer to give me data on a piece of paper, or on a display screen. That's what I want. One of those two.
The running joke at Taylor was never give Wayne a test in development because he won't do the colors right. It's like, Chris's shirt is green.
To exasperate on that point, that's one of the reasons why in our startup class we give a colorblind test, to see if you are colorblind, so you can effectively read the reagents or your readings.
Exactly right. And
a lot of times it's hard to disseminate between 7.8 and 7.6 because it's so close when it's in between,
Right. And interesting enough, pH is one of the color grades that I can see. Forget about DPD, all the pinks. I just can't. But we were talking about accuracy earlier, and this is not just Taylor, but this is chemistry in general. drop test, a titration, like a calcium hardness test or an alkalinity test, or counting the drops of something, has an accuracy of plus or minus 1 drop, which is usually 10%. So, and that's pretty good for what it is. When you get into the full-blown lab situations, or maybe even a retail store that has those really big, long glass tubes, they're called burette titrations, that accuracy is even better at 2%. Now, color matching, it's a whole different ball game. I'm going to tell you what the correct phrasing is for accuracy, and then I'll explain it. It's plus or minus the difference between 2 standards, which means in English, it's your pH. If you have a color standard that's 7.4 and a color standard that's 7.8, and the color that develops falls in between, obviously you're going to say 7.5. Okay, but the difference between 7.4 and 7.6 is actually 0.2, right? 1/2 of 0.2 is 0.1. So it's a lot more accurate color matching wise when the range is very narrow. The bigger, the wider the range, that's where the accuracy is for color matching kind of stretches. Like if you had a test that went from 50 to 100 and the color fell in between, that's a 50 part per million difference. 1/2 is 25. You could be off 25 parts per million in either direction. So, go ahead, Chris.
Yeah, I was going to say, and that can lead you to a world of hurt.
Exactly right.
All of this, when we're talking, we're typically talking about testing. It's primarily, for the most part, about that crucial initial 28 days, 30 days of new plaster or other finish, that time period. So if you're off by 25%, theoretically, you could be screwed, right?
That's
you could be
yes,
just
that is significant.
Yeah, it is significant. And that's why I think this is important to really challenge listeners and the professionals out there to become intimately familiar with the tools that they're using and understand the proper way to use them and know their limits and their capabilities as well. And if you are using one that has a plus or minus that can get you out of bounds in a best case scenario, then maybe it's time to to improve or upgrade your tools,
Exactly right. And I can't tell you how many times over the years I get calls or emails from Taylor, to Taylor, that the guy says or the gal says, I've been in the industry for 50 years and I know exactly what it is. Well, stick your finger in the water kind of thing. Yeah. Oh God, you kill me now.
Our industry is so used to that, Wayne. We know.
So we've seen this all, but I was talking to somebody years ago. And it literally, one guy did say he could tell by tasting the water about what pH, what it looked like. But there was another guy who used to have, I think he had like a little OTO test, but he'd just be able to drop droplets right in the water.
Oh, yeah.
It's 7.2. It's perfect. And I'm like,
they made leather holsters for him.
Yes,
I've never seen them. Yeah, 2-bottle holsters. Yeah,
I've seen that at the Western show, and I was shocked.
Yeah.
That's hilarious.
And so as far as testing is concerned, the point, Chris, that you made is that know your test kit. Okay, be intimately familiar with it. Read the damn instructions. That's why we write them. For a reason. Don't assume you know how to do the test, because the odds are you probably don't, particularly if it's a new parameter.
I'm 52 years old. I've been testing water since I'm 16, and I will tell you, there's times I have to go back and thank God for the placard on the kit that tells you how to do it, because there's sometimes I got to go back. All right, am I doing this? The right reagent, all of that.
Right.
And it really helps. Certainly, especially when you're learning that certain tests that you neglected 20 years ago are really falling into play today, especially in our plaster world with the LSI, is really taking the time to understand how all of these tests correlate with each other. And I don't mean to jump into the LSI. We're going to come to
we can jump.
I was just going to say that was the next.
You would think I would have one, right?
That was unintentional because I'm not reading the outline over here.
Good segue. Good segue.
Yeah.
That was the original app right there. There is no need for an app when you understand the free with every Taylor test kit, virtually every of the larger the Taylor Wheel of Destiny.
I always tell people, not only is this vital for chemistry and for water balance and for LSI, but it makes a great coaster and little mini frisbee too, if you work it right.
It's a robust
multitasking.
Is that the first thing guys throw away when they open the kit?
Yeah, either that or the number 5 and the number 6, you toss them.
Yeah, exactly.
Number 3, who uses DPD number 3?
Let's get into that. Wayne, please tell us from your perspective, why is that coaster frisbee, aka why is that often overlooked item the most important thing in that kit?
Because, I'll be honest with you, and if anybody from this particular segment is listening, most service technicians are not the brightest bulbs in the world. And, they're told to do A, B, C, and D and nothing else, right? So A might be, clean out everything, leaf out everything. Oh, and by the way, you need to do this test. Just add a couple drops of this and that, write down some number, and then that's it. And they don't know. They don't care. They don't. Their bosses, their company, their whatever doesn't feel there is value in getting that additional information to maintain customer relationships and to make sure that their $50,000 plus investment is going to be around in a month or two. That's all they care about. That's all they really care about. Then you get the good ones. Then you get the service people who are out there every day doing the job they're supposed to do and doing it right. So they know the value of something like this or one of the mobile apps that you can get to. They get that. Okay. So when something like this comes along, it's just something extra they don't want to have to deal with, the people who don't care. But yet you do have to deal with this. You guys are a perfect example of that. We all know what happens when you've dug that hole, you've done all the prep work and you're ready to add the water. You don't just walk away. You got to help instruct the customer on what to do, or the service company that's going to be handling it, or even in some cases the same company. I mean, I know there's some build customers who also have service involved with it too. And if they do that right and they teach them something like the LSI, it's good. It's invaluable knowledge. And if I can, Chris, let me just dig a little deep into the LSI. It won't take very long, but
please, no, take your time.
Yeah, remember with and by LSI we mean Langmuir Saturation Index. That's what it stands for. And there really was a guy named Langmuir. He was back in the 1930s or 40s. He was a professor of, I believe, engineering at UCLA, and worked with the then LA Water Department to help them define how acidic the water was coming down from the mountains into the aquifers that were going into the city. He developed a formula that was tweaked a little in the 1950s to what we see it today. But basically, you're taking the 5 most common parameters so that you should be testing for anyway. So you're talking pH, total carbonate alkalinity, calcium hardness. Then you have temperature and TDS, which play a little bit of a minor role, but still play a role. So when you're looking at something like the Watergram or the other devices that are out there, you can see right on there pH, temperature, alkalinity, calcium hardness, that kind. It's right there. For those for anybody who's taken the CPO class, we teach people how to do the LSI, but not even using that. They have to have the chart. They literally have to do the math. Okay, this is for people who are math phobic. This little slide rule here. Math is not good with them. So when this was created, it was rectangular. It was about 4 by 3 on a card that looked like a slide rule. Remember slide rules? Or are you all too young to remember those?
No, remember it.
I have seen with the pull. It almost had like pull out tabs on it, didn't it?
Yes, it did. Yeah. And I used to have in my office. I probably still do here in boxes underneath this. All the 4 different variations of the Watergram that Taylor's had over the years, and it's a big involvement. So this is the latest one and the best one. But I digress. So pH is critical. We know for curing. We know that water temperature has a role in it too, to a degree. The biggest thing is calcium hardness, obviously. Okay, and that's actually what you do is going to depend on geography. And if I step a little off base or something, or say something wrong, yell at me, throw something at me. But let me do an example. I'm about 35 miles north of Baltimore, so I'm on the East Coast. I live right across the street from the Chesapeake Bay, literally. And do I have a boat? No, I know better. But I'm on Baltimore City Water, where I am. And Baltimore City Water comes out of the tap in my kitchen at about 50 parts per million. It's pretty low. Okay. If we were out in Phoenix or Mesa or Scottsdale, you're looking at 1,500 plus out of the ground there. So it's going to depend on geography. I mean, parts of Florida, when my in-laws were alive, they lived in Ocala, north of Tampa. Out of her kitchen sink, I think her hardness was somewhere in the 300 range, which is kind of perfect if you're shooting for those numbers. But regardless, you got to know your geography. So you have to know your makeup water. Test your makeup water. I can't emphasize that more. That's your starting.
You're preaching to the choir.
I know.
Forever.
But your point is right. I'm living in Connecticut. Connecticut, we have a combination of city and wells. Wells tend to have hard water. City tends to have almost water dead on. At least we're in my area. But yeah, I live on Long Island Sound. I could see Long Island like Sarah Palin could see Alaska from my coastline over here. Right. But you go to Long Island and the water out of the tap is 30 parts per million.
Yep.
So they're putting soft water immediately into their pools.
Exactly.
And so balancing their water is a challenge in that sense, that they have to just bring that calcium level up way more. We're here, we're almost dead on when we're filling the pools.
Yeah, and out here in the Midwest, it's really interesting, and I have been preaching this for so long, but I don't make no assumptions, right? Make no assumptions, because every city within the municipal area of Kansas City has its own unique source water characteristics. So Independence, Missouri is completely different than Overland Park, Kansas, even though they touch each other, right? And the other thing that people get in sideways here is there's a lot of homes, because it became very in vogue when building a home, especially in the 80s around here. So whole subdivisions that are 40 some years old now, which are very, very common out this way, were installed. They were created and made with a water softener, just because it was in vogue. And so that's another thing. They've got the big brine tank that's basically sapping out and softening the water because it feels good in the shower. That's neat and all, but guess what? They're putting this extremely hungry for calcium water, calcium depleted, deficient water into a pool, but they're assuming that it's actually city water that's not softened, and they can get sideways. So again, validate. It takes just a few minutes. There's virtually no cost,
exactly.
And just validate and determine what exactly you're dealing with.
Right, and I know Chris and I know Rob, you probably have heard me say this over the years, but water will balance itself despite your best attempts. And it's going to search out calcium from any source it can. Hello.
It's a similar line we use with every customer. It wants to get in balance. It'll take it from wherever it can.
And it will do the job for you. Unfortunately, it's not a good thing. You don't want that to happen. So let me give you a perfect example. Community where I live, we had a 150,000 gallon community pool. It was one of those that looked like a turn kind of thing, like a weird lightning bolt. And in Maryland, you have to be the CPO of record for a community or a public pool. I was the CPO of record. That doesn't mean I had to be there all the time, but I had to be like ready for a phone call or to come on over. I live about 6 blocks away from it. So I remember one time they before the season started, and remember, like Rob, probably like you, our pool season is Memorial Day, Labor Day, pretty much, give or take a week. This was now in probably late April, very early May. They told me that they were going to be cleaning up the pool, putting in some new coping. They were going to replaster and repaint. And I went, oh, great. Okay, fine. Make sure you test the water as it fills up. We know it's low calcium. You're going to have to add a little bit of calcium chloride as you fill so the water doesn't become aggressive. Okay, yeah. Fine, we got it. Okay, I'll be back in a couple of weeks. 2 weeks later, my very first voicemail on the phone was, Wayne, call the pool now. And it's like, okay, yeah, hi. He says, no, you need to come to the pool. Why? No, you need to come to the pool. Okay. 10 minutes later, go to the pool and I can see exactly what happened. And you guys know what happened. They did not listen to me. They did not adjust the calcium as the water was, as the pool was being filled. Apparently the pool was very nicely redone and repainted and everything. But of course, all the paint chipped off. The grout was gone. And where the paint chipped off, everything was pitted. Because of the water, I mean, it's 30 parts per million. Oh. 200 to 400 is ideal.
Yeah.
They didn't think. All they thought they had to do was reconnect the sodium hypochlorite feed they had, and that was it. So they had thousands and thousands of dollars of repair bills and replaster and all that stuff that goes along with that they didn't need to have had they listened to me or listened to a competent service person.
Yeah, and that just triggers my mind, and it's sad to think this way, but it's the reality of things too. Is like testing protects you as well, right? If you test and log your results and document, and it's transparent and everything's out there, and it said, look, we were aware of this, we did this in reaction to to remedy these potential issues, and then and to your point, Wayne, look at how fast, it's the old Rob Romano special. Look how fast you can lose a finish.
Oh, hey, I don't lose any finishes.
There he went. He went Italian on us with the hands.
Hey.
No, it's funny. There's so many pools I looked at over the years, and you go up and they're saying to you that it's the finish, and you're talking to them about calcium, and they don't want to agree. And Wayne, you mentioned a little bit, so you just go to the grout, and you could use your finger, and the grout just falls right out.
Yeah,
well, that's not the same as the plaster, so obviously it's not the plaster. What are we doing here? So.
Exactly.
So it's one of the things the late Greg Garrett taught us is that what you go to first is check out the grout. If the grout is got some issues, then you know where your problems are.
You got other things are going to happen. Exactly right.
Yeah. No, this has been really good, and just to kind of summarize everything, in my opinion, and just kind of to bring this home, it's like I can't stress, and that's why we really wanted to get you on here, Wayne. We can't stress how important it is to accurately and predictably test, right? So be proactive, test the tap water, the source water, know what you're actually putting into that bottle, that body, that empty vessel, but also know what the actual readings mean. Educate yourself. All of this information is available, and it's really what Taylor, planted their flag in was this base of information that you'd be shocked that comes in the kit, right? There is arguably how I learned pool chemistry when I first got into this industry was from that book. And of course, the one that I received looked like it had been through hell, right? It was all crinkly and had been left out, had been wet, had been dried, and was stained with different reagents.
Well, the way they laminate it now is great.
But if anyone out there, and again, we are lucky too in this industry because the testing, the testing space is a good one. There's a lot of great manufacturers out there that make unique products and with a lot of proprietary, technology behind them. But if you want to start and really advance your own working knowledge, Taylor is a great place to start, and just look at the resources that come in their test kits. And I'm a little nostalgic because that's how I learned, chemistry. It really is. So,
but I'm going to go back as president of an NPC. We have to say we're not advocating for one kit.
Right.
This is a kit that a lot of us are familiar with. For one, I grew up on the Gardex kit. It's a great kit as well. That's what my grandfather, when I was a little kid, we would test the pool every week and with that. So, and that did help me get a little better, of course, or understand how to get into the Taylor kit. That's what I was taught. But in that, one of the things that we want to talk about when it comes to accuracy of the reagents and testing, some of the pitfalls that we come across is like when a pH level, when you're testing it for first time on a new finish, that pH when could turn purple. So instead of being able to read the 8.0, now this thing is purple as grimace. What's happening there? Is the pH at like a 10.0? Is there something else that's affecting that reading?
Well, class, turn your booklets to page, page 40.
I did not come prepared.
That's okay. There's a whole section in the booklet that I wrote called The Most Commonest Testing Technical Questions and How to Solve Them. So if you get, for example, what you were talking about, Rob, purple in a pH test indicates high chlorine or bromine. Period. And it tells you how to correct that. Your alkalinity test normally goes from green to red. What if we went blue to yellow? What's happening? High chlorine or bromine. This is how you fix it. Calcium hardness. Calcium hardness, is weird. On a lot of levels, but it's weird. It's not affected by a sanitizer level at all. What screws up a calcium hardness test is the presence of metals. Ostensibly copper and iron 99% of the time, sometimes manganese, but more than likely copper or iron. And the normal colors for a calcium hardness test start off red, like a candy apple red kind of color, and go to a beautiful sky blue color. Okay. If it goes purple or it never changes color from that initial pink, a red, what that means is that there's iron or copper or some kind of metal in the water. And the booklet gives you the steps on how to correct it.
Cool.
Okay.
Even when it starts, those little particles look like they're floating around.
Now that's something different. The little bubbles. Okay. The little tiny purple blue bubbles that you might see. You see them mostly on water that they're source waters from a well. What that is magnesium hydroxide forming. It's a simple chemical reaction because you've added all those drops of the buffer in the beginning. Okay. And what does a buffer do? A buffer raises the pH of your sample really, really high. And what does the high pH do when you have metals in the water? It brings the metals out of solution and stains. So what you've done is created a separate environment of high pH water. And if there's iron or copper or manganese in the water, you're going to have that form, those little tiny bubbles. And what I tell people is that's not technically an interference. It's a reaction. And there's a difference. An interference causes weird colors and you have no idea what's going on. A reaction is the little bubbles, but you still see the whole solution is blue. So you kind of ignore the bubbles. They're saying, hi, I'm here. Nice to meet you. And just keep on doing the test till you see the overall blue of the solution. And again, in the booklet, read the booklet. I wrote it. Get a finger wag.
No, it's amazing, Wayne. I feel like we could sit here and talk to you all day. I think that's why you have every Thursday podcast. It makes sense. It's crazy. But yeah, I mean, we really appreciate you coming on and sharing, kind of, again, validating us and some of the things that we do and we preach and really bringing home the fact that, it's just like anything. You should really read the instructions. Use your tools properly. Upgrade your tools if they're available to you.
Yeah.
There's so many things out there technology-wise now, right?
Right, exactly right. But along with the liquid reagents, and Rob kind of touched on it, is check the expiration date of your reagents. A reagent that expired is an expired reagent, and it's probably not going to give you the right answer. Every test kit manufacturer now has on there a lot code, which tells us when it was made, but also has some kind of a expiration date or a best diffused by date or something like that will tell you, best diffused by June of 24 or something like that. So follow those, take a look at those expiration dates. Don't use expired reagents because you can't be guaranteed you're getting the right number. Same thing with electronics, Brent. If you're using a meter or a colorimeter or a portable photometer, they're great. They're very, very accurate. They're probably down to 3 decimal places. However, with accuracy and technology, cost goes up too. So those are usually very expensive, but they're still a meter. So you still have to clean and calibrate them on
absolutely.
Because if you don't, forget it. You just shot yourself in the foot with what money you wasted. So you still have to clean them.
being in a seasonal area that I'm in, it's automatic. When the season starts, I'm getting all new reagents for my kit just because. Well, I'm glad to see that I'm not the only one with animals and people that go ahead and interrupt the end of the podcast.
It's not Rob for once.
Chris told me about that beforehand, so that was fine.
I think this is a great time to take this home. But I mean, the great thing about this, and thank you again so much, Wayne, for coming and sharing this insight and your expertise, and some of the unique features and benefits that has made Taylor special. But this is a great category within our industry because there's a bunch of good players in this space, right?
Yes.
You've got Lamont with their automatic system and their software with their WaterLink Spin Touch. You've got a great catalog of products from AquaCheck and Hawk, parent company. So choose wisely, but I say this: educate yourself, take advantage of the resources and the tools that are provided by these great groups of manufacturers, and figure out what is best for you. But the ultimate goal and the challenge here is to know exactly how to use the tools you choose in the right way for the right reasons, right?
Right. And I'll leave you with two things. To tag on what you're saying, on many of the classes that I taught, I would first of all say, I don't care what test system you use. Proudly wearing my Taylor shirt.
Right.
And I'd get the kind of looks. And I said, no, I don't care. What's more important is that you're following the instructions and you're testing accurately and you're getting reliable results. That's the most important things. Okay. You have to be able to know what you're doing in order to make sure your customers happy and satisfied. And that's the important goal here. Like you said, Lamont makes some great stuff. AquaCheck, Hawk, ITS is another one. They're down in the Carolinas. We all make some really good products, and we all have our own little niches. Obviously, I have an affinity towards Taylor for kind of obvious reasons, but it's still if you have a kit, use it properly, and you'll get the best possible results from that testing system.
Well, you nailed it. I think that circles us back around to the title of the show, Testing the Water, right? Test the water, guys. But appreciate all you guys for listening. Keep listening. And if you want to find out more about the NPC, you can go to nationalplasterscouncil.com. Gentlemen, have a great weekend. Wayne, again, thank you so much. And we'll see you next time.
I appreciate it so much, Wayne. Good to see you. Glad you're still part of the industry.
Thank you. So am I. Take care.